that just came out earlier as a reaction to the Mike Dunleavy press conference, which happened this week as well. In fact, it happened on the same day as joint practice for the 49ers, and Mike Dunleavy was in attendance for that as well. Last night, the joint practice turned into an actual preseason game, Niners and Titans. De'Zhaun Stribling was the headliner, but there was a lot more, and I was fascinated by some of the things that our next guest said on Twitter with regard to specific position battles and maybe some guys that were thinking have a stronger hold on their position than we might think, particularly with Raheem Morris coming in and a system that's different and may not fit some of those guys. So let's bring him in. Joining us now on the River Islands guest line on Willard and Dibs is none other than David Lombardi, SF Standard on the Niners. David, good afternoon, man. What's going on?
Good afternoon. How you doing?
We're doing fantastic, man. I wonder if you could let people in a little bit on some of what you were saying on social earlier today with regard to some players that have been with the Niners here for a minute, but maybe they just aren't perfect fits for the new system that Raheem Morris is bringing.
Well, I'm still not sure about Alfred Collins, and I think that the jury is still out because he had that shoulder surgery, so I don't know if he's in full playing shape yet, so we're probably going to have to give this a little bit more time to get a firm read, but he did not have a good game yesterday, and the other 49ers defensive tackles did. I mean, Grayson Halton, that was a revelation. That was the way that he played the run as somebody who the 49ers drafted as a pass rushing specialist. I think he's playing bigger than the 49ers expected him to. That was something. I think Sebastian Valdez really impressed them. We saw a play from James Thompson Jr., one of the rookie undrafted free agents for the 49ers. So I'm wondering, Alfred Collins was drafted in the Robert Saleh year in 2025. And Nick Martin was also drafted in the Robert Saleh year in 2025. I think when you look at profiles, look at Nick Martin versus the linebackers the 49ers have brought in this year. The guys they brought in this year, one of them has a 7-foot wingspan, which is longer than anything we have ever seen at the linebacker position, as Jaden Duggar. The other one is 6'4", so he's got similar measurables lengthwise to Fred Warner. And Nick Martin is below average in terms of size. Now, he's a firecracker. I mean, the guy can really move, and he's very strong. He put up a bunch of bench press reps, but he's just shorter and he's smaller. And it's from a height-length profile, very different than what Raheem Morris has been trying to implement with just pure length. I mean, I was in that locker room yesterday, and it was unbelievable because very rarely do you feel a shift when you're, next to NFL guys because the league is so, tailored. Everything is, the margins are narrow, so there's not much difference between team to team as far as size. Even like a bad team is going to have athletes who are similar size as the very best team, and it's usually the very smallest details that differentiate teams. The 49ers at linebacker have gotten so noticeably taller and longer this year. From 2025 to 2026, it is the biggest single most noticeable shift that I have, seen in real time over my 10 years covering the team. And I just wonder, will somebody like Nick Martin fit into that room? How are they going to make him fit into that room? Maybe he will. Maybe they do have a package for him right now, so we'll see how preseason goes. And then at defensive tackle, I wonder how Alfred Collins is going to fit, where it really seems the 49ers are going shorter and stouter at that one defensive tackle position. Somebody like C.J. West, I think, is going to really, really eat in this new system.
And Sebastian Valdez actually fits that perfectly. I think he's really short and really heavy in the interior. I'm wondering about the Jaden Duggar piece of it. Is this following along with league trends? In other words, are the Niners seeing what Seattle has done and other teams with longer hybrid linebackers, and now they're following suit?
Well, I think it's a little bit of that. I think, mainly it's a way to combat what offenses are doing, and that was really started by the 49ers, right, with Kyle Shanahan. So you could trace this back 10, 15 years to when the CMCs and players like that started showing up on the scene, and that is multi-positional offensive weapons. When the offense breaks the huddle, you're not sure if it's going to be a run or a pass. You're not even sure what formation they're going to be in because the personnel, the 11 players on the field, have the ability to flex into, a number of different lineups. So as offenses really perfected that over the course of the past decade plus, defenses have had to become more adaptable as well. That's where the Nicky Manwari types of the Seattle Seahawks have come in. And I think that it's just a natural antidote, right, to what those offenses are doing. Now, for the 49ers, this has also been an injury-fueled kind of shift. What Kyle Shanahan said after Robert Saleh left to become a head coach is, we got so hurt last year, we need to find ways to stay ahead of the curve even if we lose players. So say the 49ers start losing a lot of defensive linemen, they want to be versatile enough to go more linebacker heavy. Say they lose a lot of linebackers, they want to be versatile enough to go defensive line heavy. So for 9 years, it's been 4-3 and maybe some 5-man fronts. I think they ran them 8% of the time last year. 5-man fronts, a 3-4 kind of concept. Now you're probably going to see, I don't know, it'll be maybe 60-40, 70-30. It's going to be a lot more of the 3-4 base stuff, though, for the 49ers, because they're giving themselves that flexibility up front, and it should help them overcome, roster challenges if there are some injuries over the course of the season.
David Lombardi, SF Standard. David, I think there are certain Niner fans that might be, scratching their head about this sort of concept a little bit. Robert Saleh was very loved, and Robert Saleh did great things, down his best players and got a head coaching job because of it. But there's this overarching theme, and it sounds to me like you feel this way from what I'm reading from your stuff, that this defense stands to potentially be a lot better than last year's defense. And so I wonder if you could just speak to that, because I think some people are taking this almost as like as a criticism of Saleh.
Well, first off, let me establish this. The 49ers defense, and I've written this plenty of times, I've said this plenty of times, before Nick Bosa went out, and then Fred Warner followed him out 3 weeks after that. Bosa got hurt in week 3. Every single metric had him as a top 5 defense over the first 2 weeks of the season. And that included a game against the eventual Super Bowl champions on the road. Remember that they turned over a lot of talent. They let those veterans go. They spent their first 5 picks of the draft on defensive players. What they came out with before guys started getting hurt was really good. They closed 2 games with their defense, with their pass rush. First Nick Bosa in week 1, and then Bryce Huff in week 2. So what Saleh was running last year, I have a ton of respect for. And I think that had the 49ers stayed healthy, it would have been one of the better defenses in the league. I'll even maintain that they would have been Super Bowl favorites had they been able to stay healthy last year. I mean, they literally went into Seattle and beat the eventual champions on the road. They dominated them statistically when they had that defense. So I think what Saleh put on tape, what his defense put on tape last year, I think I need to put that out there. I think it was very good. Kyle Shanahan's point is that the league is constantly evolving. The 49ers would have loved to have kept Saleh because they believe that he also had evolved the defense. It wasn't the same defense that they ran 2017 to 2019. Even within the first stint, he evolved that defense greatly. They brought Chris Kaserik in 2019. So they believe that Saleh would have continued evolving. He's not going to be able to run the same stuff in Tennessee. He's also going to have to become more amorphous. That's just the general way that things are heading. So the best option once Saleh left for the 49ers was somebody like Raheem Morris. Look at his background. He started in Tampa, which is the root of all the 49ers principles. That's 4-3. That's the Tampa 2. That's what, when you look at how, even Pete Carroll developed the cover 3, the Seattle style cover 3, it started because he was a graduate assistant working with Monty Kiffin in Arkansas. And obviously Monty Kiffin was the godfather of the Tampa defense. That's where Raheem Morris's career started. Morris then picked up some of this 3-4 stuff along the way later. And he was the Rams defensive coordinator when they ran a Fangio Staley defense. So when Shanahan hired Raheem Morris, he didn't hire him because he's running the Fangio Staley defense only. He hired him because he's majored in all of these different defenses, and he thinks that he can make this amorphous. He can take the best of what the 49ers have already run and also evolve it for the future, similar to how Robert Saleh is going to have to evolve, because that's what offenses around the league are dictating.
I wonder about the mesh point of the two different styles because Raheem Morris, just by the numbers, David, a lot more blitz happy than all the coordinators under Kyle Shanahan. Is that personnel based? Does Shanahan not love to have a defense blitz a lot? Where do you see this marriage coming together?
I think any coordinator would prefer to have a dominant front where you only have to rush 4. Because it's just math at that. But it doesn't matter if you're running 3-4 or 4-3, whatever. If you only rush 4, you can have 7 in coverage, and then geometrically it's easier to seal the back end against the pass. So everything happens in context, right? With Robert Saleh, he came from Seattle, and then Jacksonville was a stop before the 49ers, but when he was a lower-level staffer in Seattle for that great 2013 defense, they had an amazing pass rush with 4 in front of an awesome secondary. They had it all going on. That's how you are one of the great defenses of all time. Once they built it up with the 49ers in 2019, they also had an unreal 4-man pass rush, so they just didn't have to blitz a lot. You'll notice that Saleh blitzed more in 2020 after Nick Bosa went down. That was the big injury year that really started this parade that's happened throughout this decade. Then obviously he left, and then he came back in 2025. He blitzed a little bit more last year than he did when the 49ers had that great pass rush. But I think so much was broken by missing Fred Warner too last year that it's just really hard to gauge what exactly Saleh was going to do. But yes, in general, he blitzed less, and I think that did coincide with years that the 49ers had that dominant pass rush. Raheem Morris, if he had his pick, he would have a dominant front and he wouldn't have to blitz. I think any defensive coordinator would tell you that, but he's had to get creative at some of these stops and probably is going to have to get a little bit more creative with the 49ers because we're not exactly sure. Just personnel-wise, they were last in the league with 20 sacks last year. Of course, they're going to get some guys back, but you can't expect them to go from 32 to number 1 just like that. And if they're somewhere in between, well, then maybe some disguise, maybe some zone blitzes. You're not sure if Romello Height's going to drop into coverage or come after the quarterback. Maybe you can manufacture a little bit of pressure that way. And I think that's what Raheem Morris is going to try to add into the mix.
All right, David, let's get to the man of the night. Even Robert Saleh after the game was like, that kid's going to be pretty good. So, A, what's your takeaway on De'Zhaun Stribling? But maybe more importantly, where is this going? Because there's some establishment at the position for sure. What do you think his role is going to be early in the season?
Well, in an ideal world, they can have him at the big slot, which is where Jauan Jennings spent most of his time. And that opens up insane matchup advantages for the 49ers because this guy is similar to Jauan Jennings in a lot of ways, but different in that he has a 4.36 40 as opposed to a 4.7 40. So at the big slot, you either get the defense to commit a safety to the receiver, which means they probably have to bracket double him somehow, which means that Mike Evans would be one-on-one at the X receiver position, which would be a feast for Brock Purdy and Mike Evans, or you get some kind of smaller nickel back on him, and then De'Zhaun Stribling's got the 6'3" height to where he can win one-on-one. So it just creates a lot of headaches for opposing defenses if he can be at that position. Now, the 49ers' plan over the offseason was based on Ricky Pearsall playing the Z, playing the flanker. The receiver comes in motion a little bit more often because Ricky's skill set is very, very clearly tailored to play that Z receiver position. They don't have Ricky, who plays the Z. I think that De'Zhaun Stribling is good enough to play the X, the Z, or the F, at least talented enough. I think ultimately the plan is for him to be the 49ers X receiver once Mike Evans is done. But for now, Evans has the X locked down. If you want to keep Stribling at the big slot, then you've got to figure out a way to take care of that flanker position. And Jordan Watkins, that might have been the best news for the 49ers yesterday outside of Stribling, and nobody's really talking about it because everybody's focused on Stribling. But Jordan Watkins, I thought looked good. And I thought that he answered some of the questions that I had about him over the course of training camp. There was a couple sketchy plays over the middle in training camp. He made some tough catches over the middle yesterday, guys, and he's primarily been playing the Z. I don't think he has to take Ricky Pearsall's full workload there. I think that you're going to be mixing and matching guys, and Stribling could be there as well. But the more you can line Stribling up inside, the more I think it unlocks everything for this offense to just eat. And if that ends up being the case, then they're going to have numbers advantages essentially every single time they drop back to pass, because they also have Christian McCaffrey and a guy named George Kittle on this team. So it is an embarrassment of riches if they can stay healthy and if they can lock down that flanker position. And I know they're skating on thinner ice now that Ricky Pearsall's out for the season.
Does De'Bo Samuel still have enough left to be that flanker? I'm just, as you were mentioning the pre-snap motion and all the rest of it, I just couldn't help but think about 19 problems, and when he was at his best, can he be good enough still to where he can lock down that spot?
I wouldn't count on him to lock down that spot, because, the important context of the De'Bo addition is that the 49ers were planning to get him, or tried to get him. They were trying to get him even before Ricky Pearsall's PCL flared up again. So what does that tell us? That tells us that they weren't trying to get De'Bo Samuel to be the full-time lockdown Z receiver. They wanted him to be, and I say this with the utmost respect because I have a lot of respect for De'Bo Samuel's game. He's one of the most unique players that we've ever seen with his ability after the catch. But I think they really wanted him to be a glorified gadget weapon, and I think they still do. Now, this last year, the gadget weapon was Sky Moore. You use him, 4 or 5 times over the course of the season? You don't use him very often offensively, right? For De'Bo Samuel, I think there was going to be heavy usage in relation to other gadget weapons. And I think that the 49ers right now, he might have a larger role because Ricky Pearsall's gone. Maybe more of that Z is picked up. The slack there is picked up by De'Bo Samuel. Maybe it's a timeshare in between Jordan Watkins and De'Bo Samuel. So obviously the workload and expectation changes now that Ricky Pearsall's been hurt. I think that De'Bo Samuel will still be able to handle it if he can stay healthy over the course of this season. But I don't think that this is 2021, 2022 De'Bo that would be counted on to basically lock that position down full time.
David, I'm super interested in Kaelon Black and dealing with an injury. And Tim Ryan had kind of a comment last night that didn't necessarily sound very optimistic on his timetable. What do you know with regard to Black, and what kind of a role can he still carve out early with this missed time?
Well, core muscles are tricky, and he's got the adductor injury. So I'm not sure on the timetable. What I do know is that Black is a ball of muscle, and, so much of what they like about his game is rooted in that strength, whether it be the yards after contact, or it's close to 3 yards after contact per carry at Indiana, the pass protection. He was really, really physical in the short amount of time that we got to see him at the start of training camp, and they weren't even tackling live to the ground, so we didn't get to see a lot of that yards after contact balance. And so I can't wait to see it. But the problem with a core muscle injury is that it's at the center of that entire muscular system, right? So you got to make sure that he's fully healed before he heads out there. I don't know the timetable. I know the 49ers right now, that running back position is really thin. That's why they had to bring in Zamir White for the preseason game. Good news is that Christian McCaffrey is essentially good to go. They're just managing him right now to make sure that he's 100% for week 1. But you'd love to have at least one of the two, right? Kaelon Black or Jordan James ready to go. What I'm waiting for right now is Isaac Guerendo. He's still on PUP. He tore the pectoral muscle. He's running fine, but I guess that the pectoral muscle isn't back to where it needs to be to take contact. But it seems like, man, if he could get back out there, it seems like this is a really, really good opportunity for him to seize with James and Kaelon Black both out.
Golden opportunity, and it's a shame that injury might keep him from at least having a crack at it. David, any sense from you or things that you've heard as far as what the plan is for Brock Purdy over these next 2 preseason games?
Well, it's crazy. It's in my 10th season, and Shanahan's done it the same basically every year. I don't remember 2017 too specifically, but I think it was the second. There was 4 preseason games back then, but the fourth one was kind of just the guys who were going to get cut playing. The first 3, though, he wouldn't play the starters in week 1, and then he'd give the starters about a series or two. It was a play count. They have 10 to 12 plays in week 2. And then week 3 would be a quarter to 2 quarters, just depending on how much work he felt that they were getting on each drive. So if it's just a bunch of 3 and outs, then maybe he keeps them out there a little bit longer. So we're entering week 2, and I would expect a series or 2 for Brock Purdy and the starters. And, starters with an asterisk, guys like Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey, you probably just bubble wrap throughout the whole preseason. Same thing with Nick Bosa. That's what they've done in the past. By the time that week 3 hits, you can expect a longer stretch of Brock Purdy out there. And we probably, just by default at this point, will see Mac Jones next week, because I highly doubt that Curtis Rourke is going to be in there next week. So I don't think they're going to sign a quarterback either. So your quarterbacks next week suited up are likely going to be Brock Purdy, Mac Jones, and Adrian Martinez, with Adrian playing most of the game, but Purdy and Mac getting a couple series each.